Yeah. All right. Hello, everyone. Especially Aksa and Shiha. It's nice to see you here. You're welcome. Explain a bit what is Scholar Inside. So we do a monthly events, monthly Scholar Inside, where the members of Scholar can share their knowledge in any kind of topic. I don't know, from meditating to hosting like today. And you're more than welcome to connect to me. And if you would like to share some knowledge that you have, some experience that you have in our Scholar Insight, we'll be happy to see you here. But today we're having our amazing Zoon as a speaker to host on topic of moderating and hosting 101. Zoon is super experienced, would love to hear this call insight from her. So I'm not gonna talk much. I'm gonna pass it to Zoon, and yes, please.
Thank you, Ahmed. This
Thank
clap
you.
is for you
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for inviting me, Alina and Kamal. I think that I've been affiliated with Scholar since 2018. And before we get into this, I think the first thing I want to say is that Scholar is really the platform that treats you like a family and is a true family in the true sense of the word. I think the fact that all the members, new members as well as old members, everyone tries to nurture each other. And I'm affiliated with many different organizations, especially places where I work, etc., or where I've studied. But I think Scholar is the example of how to nurture members and how to really make people feel welcome, wanted, and helping them grow. So I think really a lot of my experience with moderating, a lot of my experience with, especially with embassies, we've had different events with different ambassadors. That has been critical for my personal growth and my personal experience. And I think all of that is possible when you have a supportive team and you have mentors within that team as well. So kudos to Scholar. And this is obviously an amazing platform, because I feel like even though we have so many initiatives, and Scholar has constantly evolved to be increasingly dynamic, and our activities involve outsiders as well. So having a specific initiative for Scholar members to help us learn from each other and really have more candid discussions is very valuable. So I appreciate that you guys started this. And so today's topic, what Alina and Kamal wanted me to discuss, was moderating. And for those of you who may not know, I've been anchoring for TV, for example, and hosting and moderating different discussions. These could be one-on-one or they could be panel discussions. And I think a lot of that experience through Discussion Club and Ambassador Talks also, I learned a lot, because how to handle, especially, if the audience is more engaged and interactive, if it's a smaller audience, then you need to control and understand the energy of the group of people. So I tried to do some justice to the topic. The idea is that I'll go over some of my experience specifically and some key points of the process of the experience of moderating. And then we can open the floor for questions. If you have questions, or if you also have something to add, because many of us have hosted and organized these activities together. So if I miss anything out, we can have an open conversation and see how together as a team we can improve the way we host our activities. So here goes. First of all, I'm very bad at PPT, so should I just do full like this? I don't know how. Can you guys see the text?
You can start.
Yeah, looks pretty good.
You can just
start okay.
Show. But it's okay. We can see that.
Okay. Yeah, let's make it full, and if it freezes, we'll let you know.
Got it.
Yeah, please. Wait, please. Slideshow.
And I'm nervous.
On the top.
Yeah. Okay, done. This is
perfect.
It, right?
Awesome.
Okay, yep. Thanks. So, so the topic was obviously my experience which is a few years, and as I mentioned, I've anchored on TV, and also I've hosted some events, and especially the ones with Scholar. I think those are the ones that taught me a lot. The do's and don'ts, I'll try to go over some of the things that we need to make sure of, and how, at least personally for me, because I think doing anything like anchoring, having a conversation, all of these things, how we approach an experience has to do with how we think as well. So this is my personal experience with how I've been able to manage to some extent, like to organize these activities or to conduct them. And then obviously the most important, I think that's when I was talking to Alina, she mentioned that it's really important to cover how to improvise, because we can have a perfectly planned event, but at the end of the day, we have to be ready to deal with some things that are unexpected. And I think that is the true test. Because unexpected, maybe, we have someone speaking extra or irrelevant, how to intervene without being impolite or creating a scene. I think just avoiding creating a scene. This is an important thing to try to achieve. So firstly, my experience, it was about like 7 years ago, first time that I was anchoring. And actually that was a difficult experience for me, because I had to anchor in Urdu. And of course, Urdu is my mother tongue, but I never studied in Urdu. So I think that is for some of us, like if we have to host or organize an activity that's not in our mother tongue, it is difficult sometimes. So that I think that the fact that this experience was so much out of my comfort zone, it really maybe taught me how to focus and how to find that energy inside. Because one of the first things that I learned when I was anchoring in Pakistan on TV was that if I look drained, if I am not energetic, if I'm not interested, or if I'm tired, the people in front of me will realize it. So it's very important that when you're the person hosting or anchoring or presenting, just make sure that you have a high energy level. It really makes a positive impact. And apart from Pakistan Neo TV, I also work with CGTN and China Economic Net. These are the TV related. So and obviously some audio with CRI or with some Pakistani media. So I think this is basically the experience, and I'm still learning. I still feel very nervous every time I have to host, and I think maybe most of us have that too, because every time you're up there, there could be a new challenge. So I guess, by following certain procedures, we can avoid some amount of uncertainty. So this is sort of what I'll try to go over. And the other experience that I've been able to gain over the years is moderating discussions. Now, these could be panels or they could be individual discussions. And the first one I mentioned here is obviously Scholar, because I really was privileged. I'm humbled that I was able to host many discussion clubs and also many ambassador talks. And these experiences obviously taught me better how to interact with a host and also keep the audience engaged. And all of them were group efforts, 100%. So this is the most important thing to realize, that having a good team, working together with people who are supportive and encouraging is perhaps the most important thing, especially when you're organizing this kind of an activity. So I hope that your experience with, especially the new hubs who've joined us, I hope that your experience with Scholar will be as good as mine was. Mine has been, and that can play a critical role in organizing good activity. And apart from this, I also moderate some activities for Tsinghua and for some Pakistani, maybe some panel discussions with business groups, etc., related to Belt and Road or some kind of economic cooperation. So they could be academic or they could be more business related. So the point also to say this is that hosting, it doesn't necessarily have to do with your field as much as it is a skill. Of course, you have to understand the topic, but if you're someone who's studying economics or accounting, or something, you still can host a very good panel on a topic like politics or business. It's really, at the end of the day, a skill. And personally, for me, I think it's also about being interested in what the guest is saying. Maybe that sounds really basic, but sometimes I feel myself zoning out and I'm like, no, this is just focus. What they're saying is interesting. Because if you're not listening and engaged in the conversation, you will lose the audience, because many of them are focused. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the audience. So and that you can do with any topic. So this is one thing that I do feel is very important. The topic can be not relevant to your work, to your study or work experience, but it should be something that you're interested in. So I don't think I'm a good moderator or anchor. Like, I think all of us are learning. Like, it's a learning curve. But maybe some things that I've learned over the years, and I've become from okay to a little better, is that are like these some critical points that I've written down here. I do feel, first of all, that as a moderator, you are the one that is holding the event together. Of course, you're not the expert. You're not the person most knowledgeable in the room, but you are the platform. The moderator, the person hosting the discussion, is essentially the platform. You have to lead the discussion. So there's a lot of responsibility in that. So it is important that you study a little bit, you read well in advance, you're prepared, and you have to be interested. So this is some of the critical points that I was thinking of when I was trying to compile what to talk about, was that you have to be interested. So presence over preparedness. Even be prepared, read on the topic, read on your guests, know how they think or feel. But at the end of the day, your presence of mind is going to be the most important, because in the end, you're having a conversation with them. If you're going to have a list of 7 questions and one by one, you're just going to ask those questions, it is not going to be an interesting discussion. Have a structure, but at the end of the day, if they say something that can lead to some other topic which is relevant but could be more fascinating, that's important for 2 reasons. Number 1, it will improve the natural flow of the event. And number 2, people want to talk about things that they feel passionately about. So maybe when you and your guest are discussing the parameters of the discussion, maybe they will miss on something that they truly feel or think or can be insightful on. But when they're speaking as a guest and they point to something that you realize that they have more insight on this, it's important to be receptive to that. So maybe if you have questions later, like what I mean by that, I can go in more detail. And the other thing is obviously to understand your audience. I really feel it's important that while my guest is speaking, if it's one-on-one, obviously during the discussion, it's unlikely that I will interrupt them. But in a panel discussion especially, see if people are getting bored or if it's getting a little dry. And it's good to be a bit spontaneous in this situation, because a good event is not about the quality of the information only, it's about the quality of the experience of the people attending it and the people you've asked. So being receptive, like observing how people are sitting, and maybe if there's some disruption, like be the one, take charge, take responsibility. If you think someone is making noise or something, just message one of your teammates that, can you ask those people to, not make noise. Just be observant of the whole whole gathering. And don't lose interest. I said that before. I have before anchored when I was bored, and when you're bored, really the quality deteriorates. So just be interested, like find a way to be interested. I'm talking about bad situations. Mostly it's not going to be like that, but if once in a while you feel like you're not that focused, just really try your best to stay focused and control your thought process in that moment. So the whole process of moderating a panel, number 1 is the starting. Like I divided into 5 parts, like starting during the event, how to handle the Q&A and interactions, how to close the event. And 5th is like just some special points. Maybe I've already gone through some of them, but I'll try to be as thorough as possible. First of all, when you're starting the event, I think adding a personal touch makes a big difference. So for instance, we had last year, this journalist Atul, Indian journalist. And the topic he was talking about was also relevant to my work, to my research area. But at the same time, Atul and I had shared many panels. I knew him in a personal capacity. And when I was introducing him, it was just so important for me to add a personal touch to, give an insight. Because people know Atul is a journalist, maybe they've seen him on TV, maybe they know a little bit about him. But to make your guest more interesting by telling something that could be insightful or something that you and that guest have experienced, this could be ideal. If you don't have a personal story to contribute when you're introducing your guest, then you can maybe you found something that they've written or they've talked about, or a topic, or maybe the conversation you were having while you were discussing the parameters of the event. It's always a good idea while introducing to add something personal and meaningful to that introduction. And the second thing is to introduce your speakers yourself. Of course, if it's an event with one guest, then it makes sense, that you are introducing the person, their name, etc. As I said, adding a personal touch is very good. But if it's a panel, I think a lot of times people just ask the guests to introduce themselves. Sure, they can do that as well, but I think it's a good idea to do it yourself, because you can connect their work together, I think, and it also gives you more a way to be the one setting the tone for the event. I think that's important, because in the end, when those guests will be talking to each other, you will have to connect the dots at the spur of the moment. So I think that's a very good idea, to introduce them yourself and to add that personal touch. Now, during the event, once you've introduced, obviously, there are two scenarios. One is that it's one person, like most discussion clubs will have one speaker. So during that, just obviously be vigilant, be aware. Don't just obviously you have to do 2-3 things at the same time. Number one, you have to assume you're the audience and listen to what they're saying intently, understand what they're saying, because after they're done speaking, you're the one who's going to be asking questions, and those questions better be linked with what they've already said instead of pre-prepared, right? So that's one thing you need to do. Second thing, as I already mentioned, I think it's just very important to be the one in charge. We have a team, 90% likely, if there's some disruption, some disturbance, then someone else from the team will already notice that. But you also have the responsibility as a team member, because you have literally the bird's eye view in this hall, you and the guest, right? You're the ones facing the audience. So if you see something, be vigilant. It is your responsibility as well to make sure that the event is smooth. Then in the case that it's a panel, it gets tricky sometimes, because I also host, for example, this TV event, this TV show, and even though I have 2 guests, it can be hard to split the time equally. But this is incredibly important. So one way to do that in a panel is to just go one by one. But sometimes it could be interesting that if you have 4 guests sitting on the panel, then you may want to connect the topic, like something they said may connect with the person who doesn't have the next turn. So in that sense, I think it really has to be your judgment how to include people and to keep the discussion as natural as possible. So what helps me do that, and I think I'm still learning every time I host a panel with about 4 people, 3 to 4 people, it can get tricky, but it is really just to be like having a conversation. Don't think so much that you're hosting an event, like just focus on being in that moment, you're talking to people, and whatever they want, whatever is within the parameters of the discussion. Obviously someone going off topic, then you have to make sure that you politely intervene there. And it's possible to do that. Like you can always say, for example, if someone is taking too much time and they don't realize that we have limited time, so you can interrupt them politely. And there are different ways to do that. For example, yes, that's an excellent point, we can come to that later, etc., etc. There are ways to do that, but there's always a way to stop people from going off topic without offending them. And sometimes you can also joke, yes, but we have limited time. It's okay to do that too. Then obviously this is the part where the guests are speaking, and either you're moderating a panel or you're part of that, or you're just listening to one guest who's speaking. Then how to handle the Q&A. I think Q&As can be particularly tricky. In discussion club, for example, we've had many instances where someone would, instead of asking a question, they start talking a lot. And I feel like sometimes in the beginning, I remember once I didn't interrupt the person asking the question. I should have, because he wasn't just making a speech. He wasn't just taking other people's time, but I think what he was saying was a little provocative. And at that point, Olim after that event told me that just tell those people to not go, just tell them to stop. You can really do that nicely, and just make sure that at the end of the day, the experience of the guests and the experience of your speaker, the audience and the speaker, that's what matters. So if someone is disrupting, you have to make sure that you cut people if they're asking questions that are too long. The other thing is that obviously maybe there are many people asking questions. So just make sure that you can pick a diverse group. It is always a good idea. For example, if 4 men already asked, just ask the woman, pick the woman next. Or if younger people are asking, there's someone older. It's always good to have different points of view and make your event as inclusive as possible. And the other thing is that if no one is asking a question, then also there's no need to get awkward. Then you say, okay, then you just ask a question, just take that as a moment to further the discussion if you still have some time left. And another good idea is that when people ask a question, you don't have to just sit there and just, pick the person asking the question and then take that to your guest. You can contextualize their query, and maybe you can include something that you've experienced yourself or that was mentioned in another event earlier, and connect that and add to the question, and then take it towards your guest. So this is another good idea to keep the event in your, because at the end of the day, you have to manage the energy, and it's just much better to be the one, be that moderator is also the person between, you're connecting the audience with the speaker. So being the one also adding to their questions, or maybe even for example, further asking okay, so is that what your question really means? This could be good, because then it keeps things more interactive. And then we come to closing the event. And over here, obviously the timing, it's just really important to make sure that you leave at least 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes minimum to close the event. It really depends on how much you have to say afterwards, and 5 to 10 minutes is, I think, minimum. Giving closing remarks is before. If, for example, you still have a lot of questions, I think many of you already know that, but a good way to minimize the time in the Q&A is to take multiple questions at the same time. That's a good, we don't think of that every time, but it's a good way to keep the time under check. So this is one more thing you can do in the Q&A. If you think time is limited, take more questions, sure, but just take 3 questions at the same time and try to maybe turn them into 1 question for your guest, if that's possible, if those questions are relevant. Then give closing remarks for sure. Give closing remarks based on what the guest said, something, again, personal, not necessarily about you, but something unique. Maybe you could, in your closing remarks, you could connect what they've said to something that is more meaningful, or that some vision, that we have as a community, as SCOLAR. So trying to give even 3 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes maximum closing remarks that really leave the audience with some purpose and a deeper understanding of what SCOLAR is about. I think that could be really important. It can make a big difference. And before you close, also give your guests the opportunity to say something in the end. They may thank the audience as well. Most of them also thank the platform, and they may have something else to add, which can be a good touch, because at the end of the day, the guest's experience matters a lot. How happy, how comfortable your speaker feels during the event is also going to affect the quality of the event. So you do that throughout by making them feel more welcome, by adding a personal touch to introducing them, and also by, encouraging them to tell more. Maybe if you know something else that they could talk about, encouraging them to say things that you think they can speak more effectively on. And when you're closing, again, to give them that space once again to really make them feel honored, to say once again how they felt about the experience, or anything that they may have missed out, is a good way. And obviously thank the guests and the audience both. Thank the audience for attending. It's a good idea also to encourage, after we have discussion club events, depends, sometimes you have like 10 people, mostly we would have 30 something people at least, right? So it's always nice that we as Scholar, if we are able to not just have, obviously we have our own members and everyone has their own roles, but at the end of the day, it's nice to have a Scholar community, even of people who are not members, but people who network, after the event, they can talk to each other. 50% of what they're talking about has to do with Scholar as well. And this can become some loyal attendees, a community of people that have been impacted by Scholar. So I would say that if it's possible to encourage people to, exchange ideas, exchange WeChats, have personal interactions with the guest after the event is over, is a really good idea. And I think it really strengthens the ability of our platform to make an impact on how people feel and think. So this is something we do pretty much every time. And actually, sometimes even after 1-2 hours, people are still there, especially when we were at the Bookworm. It's such a nice spot anyway, but people would keep talking to each other, and they would come again and again to our events. So having that sense of community is something we can enhance by just encouraging them to interact. Taking a group photo. This is very important. I did not include that in this slide, but just make sure you take a group photo with everyone and share the Scholar QR on the screen as well. We did that every time. I think you already are doing that as well, but just make sure this is like essential. We shouldn't forget to do that. And this is as far as the event goes, the process of the event goes. And some special mentions I was thinking of, because I was thinking about like, what are the because I've had weird experiences. Like once I had a big fly on my set, this kind of stuff can happen. So how do you deal with this stuff? Just keep calm. Like, this is the first thing that I could think of. Like in any situation, don't get shocked. You cannot get shocked or get nervous or panic if something weird happens. So first of all, keep calm. And you should be how to handle disruptions. What the example of a disruption could be that someone is making noise, for instance. Don't hesitate to even nicely tell the people, hey, hi, over there, can you just keep it a bit low? If you need to do that, just do that. And don't get awkward if you have to make sure that the decorum is being respected. Then if the guest is getting late, happened to us so many times. Once I remember this, one of our speakers was like 15 to 20 minutes late. In that situation, there are many ways to make sure that we're still professional. It happens to everyone, So if the guest is getting late, again, do not panic. It happens in the most professional meetings as well. Just find, maybe you can start talking about Scholar. Maybe you can start introducing the guests. Maybe you could even do something like if everyone is sitting and waiting. Sometimes people are still having their coffee or wine, whatever is being served at the event, so it's fine. But if everyone is sitting and seems to be getting anxious, just start to say, hey, our guest is getting a bit late, something happened, but what would you like to specifically discuss? Just start having a discussion with them about the topic. Or maybe you could even tell an interesting story about how you met the guest, what you know about the guest. It's a good idea to just, instead of worrying and thinking, oh, every minute the clock, second by second, like the clock is ticking and getting nervous yourself, just chill, just have a conversation with the people who are there. And it's not a big deal. It can happen. Questions too long, really, you have to stop people from asking, like just stop them. Nicely, just smile when you say something. And maybe, just say, hey, next time, can you, we just need to keep the question short. We're short on time. Or I think we understand this is what you're asking, right? Just be the person to say that. It's okay. Because actually what's worse, because sometimes we're thinking about the person who's asking the question and you don't want to be offensive. You can avoid being offensive to that person. But I think what is more offensive is to ignore the sentiments of the rest of the audience. If someone is hogging too much time and asking a very long question or just going off on their own rant, they are the ones really being offensive to the host, to the guest, to the audience. So you as the moderator have the responsibility, nicely, politely, without creating a scene, to ensure that people respect each other. The person who's asking the question that matters less than everyone else who's taking their time out to be at your event. So definitely make sure you're able to intervene. And if people start arguing, that has happened. You can just really tell them to stop. We can say, oh, okay, we can discuss these differences later. Just be the one to stop that conversation. People do disagree. Sometimes they start cross-questioning with the guest. And at that point, this has happened a couple of times to us. I think, Alina, we were all at events where this happened. And then it's just a good idea to say, I think we can continue this later, but more people have some questions. Just say that, okay? So it's okay. And we have a whole team. So if someone is being, that has never happened yet to me personally in a Scholar Discussion Club event, that people just don't stop if you ask them to. But in case that happens, we have a team as well. So, someone else can help you sort of deal with that. But it's so rare. I don't think you need to foresee that. And if questions are out of topic or too sensitive, this has happened to me a few times, even as a speaker. Sometimes people ask me some sensitive questions. As a guest myself, I know how to deal with that. I've talked about that somewhere. We can discuss this afterwards. But as a moderator, you can do the same. You can say, hi, this is a question that maybe you can discuss after, but just make sure that our platform does not become a platform being misused by people for personal means, for personal ends, or for creating some conflict. So obviously that judgment has to be made in the moment. But if you feel something is insensitive towards the guest, or it is a sensitive topic, or it is really out of the scope of the discussion and it cannot qualitatively add to anyone else in your audience, then just be the one to step up and say that maybe this doesn't fit the criteria of our event right now. Just say that, and it's not a big deal. And time management, yeah, this is so important. I hope we are managing our time right now as well. Kema, you can let me know. And in case you're and you also sometimes, for example, once our guest got really late and his PPT was just fantastic, so I actually stopped in the middle. I asked him how long he needs, and nicely, we have to be polite and then just let the audience know, hi, maybe if we request you all to extend the event by 30 minutes, and people will mostly say yes. So yeah. So just be considerate. Like if you're taking more of people's time than expected, just, ask them, let them know, see what they feel about that. It's not a bad idea. And I think, to be honest, I think spontaneity, a little bit of spontaneity, like just being a person, because you have to be, they really made an effort to be there for you. You're hosting them. You're not just a host, like, just there sitting there like a host. You're hosting them like you would host someone in your home. And you have to sort of keep that relationship, that dynamic is very important. So keep them engaged in the whole process. Also, for instance, one thing that I feel when I see people do that, and I try to do that myself as well, is that if you're making a comment, if you're talking to your guest, also look at your audience and, maybe ask them a question. Yeah, you can ask them a question too, if it makes sense in the moment. The more you keep them engaged, the more interested you are in your guest and also your audience, the better the whole experience for you too, not just for them, but also for you. And yeah, first, the most important thing is enjoy yourself. The whole point of having these events, like right now, even, or whenever, is to have a great time. And that is contagious. That is what matters. And learning is the best when we enjoy it. And I think this is what Scholar really manifests. So yeah, that's it for me for now. And thank you, Kimon. Thank you, Alina. Thank you, everyone who's here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Zoon. Amazing insights.
Loved it.
Oh,
Amazing. Love it.
thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah, now
Zoon, may we have like we're gonna have like a quick maybe. I mean, I want to ask a question, Zoon. About the topic. Feel free to type in your questions or maybe ask one more time. You said you still feel nervous or stressed before the event or meeting started when you need to host. So I've been hosting a few times as well, and I had some experience, but I'm still nervous every time. And I wanted to ask you, what ways do you find useful to stop the nervousness?
Okay. Okay, so firstly, this is something weird. I don't know if it's going to make sense to anyone else, but I think nervousness is actually energy. If you don't feel nervous at all, then there's no energy in you. It's really energy that you can channelize. So I think feeling a bit nervous is a good thing. Feeling nervous is a good thing. What's important is to channelize it. So number one, like if you feel nervous, that means you can be more energetic in the event. But the question is really, okay, do you feel nervous that, oh, people will judge you? You feel self-conscious? Maybe, for example, for me, exactly, I think it's probably the same for both of us. Like, what if I can't say something, what if I'm not able to say, to express my idea effectively, or being anxious about the experience. So I think what helps me personally is to, number one, realize that nothing is perfect. There's no perfect way to host something. There is no perfect way to make a presentation. It's your way. It's your experience. So instead of focusing on being perfect, just be yourself. Just know that you have something valuable to contribute in that moment. And I think shifting that focus from trying to be perfect, trying to do something extraordinary, shifting focus from there towards just trying to have a good experience and seeing that these are people that maybe you can say something which is new for them. I think this focus is very important. And then again, also as sometimes if I have to make a speech, if I'm the guest, or if I have to do closing remarks, that also could make me nervous. I would just think about that. Focus on your thought process. Don't focus on how people are judging what you're saying. I think this does help me. But the other things, I mean, you can do some basic, like don't if coffee makes you anxious, it gives you anxiety, just avoid that. Have water. That really helps. And just try not to think about messing up, and know that if you mess up, it's not the end of the world. Everyone, okay, just one thing I tell myself is, I don't know anyone I completely admire, or anyone who is extremely successful, who has never made a fool out of themselves. Really, just think about that, So just know that, it's just try your best and prepare as much as you can, but don't cram. Try to feel the process. One more thing, I hope I'm not too long. I'll also try to manage the time. But I feel like one thing I realized, especially when I go as a panelist on some discussions, is that before I would really read a lot and prepare a lot. And actually that made me not think. I was trying to recall what I had prepared instead of, but now what I do is I prepare a bit, but I try to feel the topic, and what matters, the quality of what I say will improve when I'm actually thinking, feeling my thought process, not when I'm just trying to recall something I said. So I think that definitely helps me. It also helps me enjoying that process helps.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you,
Oh
Zoon.
yeah, making points is not a bad idea. Take like yeah, keeping like paper with some points. That's
Yeah. Then
always a good idea.
a bit one more like it's kind of a small question I guess I have. Um, I have a bit of a problem whenever I go with notes. Either I go with a big A4 paper, or I would go with an kind of an iPad, or would make like a little probably badges of papers. What do you prefer to go like on a hosting on moderating when you have to
Um,
have some notes with you?
handwritten. Even though my handwriting sucks so much that sometimes I can't understand it. If I avoid that, this is true. If I avoid that, handwritten is the best for me because when I'm writing with my hand, I remember better. This is maybe I'm just
Mm.
too old. I'm pretty old, so maybe that's the reason. But really, when I write with my hand, even if I'm having an important call and I need to take notes, I prefer to at least first draft write them with my hand and keep them brief. If I write too much, then I can't, because the point for me to take notes for a conversation, for a discussion, is not to read them, but to just be able to look at them and remember what I had to say. Just make sure I don't forget a topic. So keeping them as precise as possible is better. Because sometimes I've had where I've written sentences and I'm speaking and then I'm reading and speaking at the same time, and that can make you nervous for good reason. Yeah,
All right,
keeping
all
them
right. Thank you, thank you,
yeah.
thank you, Zoon.
I also have a question. Can I?
Yeah, sure, please, Alina.
Yeah, you taught a lot about how to manage with audience, how to manage with speaker if they talk too much, right? But sometimes
Yeah.
we also challenge with the problem that public or audience is very passive, like too passive.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
offer questions, that awkward silence comes. So what to do in this kind of situation? Can you tell us?
Yeah, this is why I once I think I went over this, that if no one is asking a question, then just ask the question yourself. One thing I like to do, I don't know if I'm funny, but in my head sometimes I think I'm funny, so I just crack
You
a joke and a few people will laugh, just that. And also don't ignore. So another thing I mentioned was, I think, just be receptive to the audience. Like, you're right, like I did, even though in my head when I wrote that, I was actually I was thinking about a passive audience if they're bored, right? Just too passive. But the example I gave was, what if someone is making noise or there's disturbance? So for a bored audience, I think one of the things I do, and I think it could be helpful, is that if your guest is talking about something, and really some people are so knowledgeable and so impressive, but they can be bored, they can get boring when they're making a presentation. It can happen. So maybe just ask, probe them on something, or just interrupt, just cause a disruption. The disruption is useful in a nice way, like just relevant to that topic, but also maybe you can take that point and talk to the audience yourself. I think this really does help stir up the energy. Another thing that I thought I would mention, I forgot. You remember once we did the ambassador talk with Belarus ambassador? And ambassador talks, we all know that they can get very serious. Everyone has to sit like this and quiet and very proper, and sometimes ambassadors can just be too serious too. So we came up with a rapid fire round with the ambassador. Everyone enjoyed that because it was really funny questions, first, not too personal, but just interesting questions that he had to respond to very fast. So I think with what you just mentioned, one of the things we can always do is have a rapid fire round with the guest. I think that can get the audience more interested. But really, for a boring audience, a bored audience, the the solution is firstly, like, just to ask them a question, to talk to them, to get them involved in the discussion. And if they still don't, then just make sure that that silence doesn't affect you too much. One thing we can also do is get our people to ask questions. That's not a bad idea. So we have to prepare. We do that a few times, that we already have scholar members who will ask questions in case nobody asks a question. That's
Yeah.
a good idea too.
Yeah, it's also good tip. Then you have team members who are on backend. So if audience
Yes.
very keep silence, then your team members just type the questions or ask a question. It's
Yeah.
it's work of team.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah. So we prepared. And
We've
also
done that, right? We texted each other.
always,
Like,
always do
before
that.
us.
Audience is keeping silence. We just okay. We have to ask questions.
Maybe we can start making noise. No, no, don't do that. But yeah.
Okay, I have two questions that are related to each other. So let's talk about panel. When we have several panelists, for example, every of them, or not only panelists and speakers, but when one of them or speaker just finished one of the topics or answer on the one question, should we give a respondent date, or we just can switch it and go on? For example,
I think,
yeah. So for
yeah.
example, like one speaker finished the questions, and you have another and ask directly another speaker, or you need to have this, your word between that. It is the first.
Okay. And the second question?
I forgot. Wait, me remember.
No, I think this is a full question. If
Yeah,
you,
continue.
I do have an answer. Yeah, I do have an answer for this one. Definitely, it's a good idea to, like, even I said, even if you have one speaker and you have an audience asking a question, it's a good idea to play with that question before you take it to the guest. It's always a good idea, especially if you have enough time. And I think as the moderator, you already have prepared for the topic. You do have something valuable to add. And in the case of a panel, it is always a good idea to analyze a bit what they said, to comment on what they said, or to summarize what they said. In some cases, because especially when in the panel discussion, you'll have 3 to 4 to 5 rounds of each person, right? The order can change. You can also play with that depending on, maybe someone said something relevant to the person whose isn't the next turn. But when one person finishes speaking, especially in the first series of comments, the first like the first time they're all going to speak, it's an excellent idea to summarize a little bit what they said. And instead of just asking the questions as you wrote them, just that question is a template. You can connect the question you had in mind with what the previous speaker was saying. Even if they don't really connect, it's just a good idea to be in a flow, because the way we talk to each other is a conversation. It's interesting. But if we start talking like it be, like without connecting, it wouldn't be interesting to hear, it wouldn't be interesting to participate in, and not interesting to watch. So just making it organic can mean, yes, you are definitely going to take what they say and then take the next question connecting both.
Okay.
I think so.
And my second additional question, I remember that was about if the audience asks a question, but didn't address to the speaker, and you have a panel. How should you do in this case? What you should?
I like to make, like, I say, so which one will go with this? Who like, sometimes, you can just throw it at them, make people laugh a bit, I think that's always a nice idea, especially if you're comfortable enough with the guests. I mean, people can be different. I think mostly in a panel, by that time, the ice has melted. People are really relaxed and warm. So you can always say which one and if it's a difficult question, you can, be funny and say, who would dare to answer this? But sometimes then, you can choose the one who hasn't been asked the question. Actually, as a moderator, you can also be the one that if someone asking a question asks X or Y, you can be the one saying, okay, I think you can ask this question. You can answer this question as well, or instead. You have that, because the point is, number one, to get the best quality and your best understanding, but also to make sure that all panelists feel equally welcome. And this is something I experienced when I would be on a panel, like how the moderators also dealt with it sometimes. Like, just make sure I feel good if I'm being asked to speak as much as others. And if someone like ignores, then it doesn't leave you with a good feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Cool.
Thank you.
We'll take it. Was my
Hi, Max. Hi, June. I don't think
Hello.
you remember me. We met
Hi.
in, I do remember me. So we met in that SCOLAR Chartered happened in SEO Secretariat. We talked a lot about like how Nepal is just like inclined towards India and China, you know. So I
Yes,
don't know if you
yes.
remember.
And I'm very happy that you're here because Nepal is a country I've always, I'm very deeply interested. And whenever I meet Nepalese people, they welcome me warmly. So I remember our conversation as well. I'm interested in in this Himalayan
Yeah.
country. So
So
happy to have you.
right now yeah, it's so good to see you and again connect to you. And my question is like you mentioned that you when you are a host, you know, you don't have knowledge about everything, you know, every particular, suppose like my
Yeah.
background is agriculture, but like sometimes I have to host a person who comes from the background of politics or technology, you know. So like when you make mistake, like it is certainly that you may make mistake, you know, like you may give wrong fact. So like how to like, you know, neutralize that later.
Okay. That's a very important question because especially sometimes, like, some terms, if it's not your topic, you don't know how to even use some terms, right? And to misquote, I think misquoting we can avoid because we just need to say what we've prepared for that topic. And obviously, I think generally, if you're misquoting like statistics or numbers, maybe there are different sources. So just we can try to make sure in advance that we have the right information. It's not a bad idea to take your research on the topic even to someone whose field this is, or even to your guest, for example. Hey, I'll use this numbers, this information to introduce. Can you just vet in case? But the other thing that I try to do is I cheat in a way. If even if it's technology or if it's something like economics or business, I try to connect what they're saying with my own topic, because the truth is that these topics connect in the end. So I don't know what is your field, what's your personally, what's your field? Like, what are the 2-3 fields that you are most comfortable in?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
And
no, like,
also one
for
question.
example, if okay, let me give an example. Like, try to connect what they're saying with what you already know. And I think that is also going to be more interesting for the audience because people will come from different fields. So for instance, in artificial intelligence, we had one speaker talking about AI, and actually a lot of AI is a very technical field, but at the same time, it does in a way connect with international relations, it connects with politics, it connects with some topics that I am familiar with. So that's why I think presence over preparedness. Like, if you're present in the moment, you can find those connections in what they're saying. And if you say something wrong, it's not a big deal either. Like, just laugh it off. Don't get embarrassed. Like, just laugh it off because it can happen to anyone. Even if you try to avoid it, if you say something inaccurate, someone corrects you. Oh, thank you. That's it. I don't think it's a big
Okay,
deal. I
thank
don't
you.
think people get shocked when that happens. Yeah, and hope to
Yes,
see more of your events. Yeah.
it just happened to me yesterday where I gave the wrong fact. So anyway, another
But
question is
but
like
how do? Okay. Yeah,
okay,
it's
I did the
okay. It
same. Like
happens to my professors
I,
as well. It's not a big deal, really.
I was smiling. I was smiling. I know. I think Elna knows about it. I was smiling and I was saying thank you for correcting me. And another question is, as Elna asked about panelists, like we have several questions throwing, like as like, you know, the time limitation. We have very limited time when we do a panelist round, and
Yeah,
as you said that like we have to give summarize the whole thing what they have said, or also
yeah,
like make question that relate to you, you know. But like
yeah.
sometimes the time doesn't give you, so in that, like in that case, how to make it short, you know, like to summarize it as
You don't
well,
have
but
to summarize everything. No, you should not summarize everything. you should summarize, like someone speaking for 20 minutes, you can summarize what they said in 40 seconds. It's possible. Just take the most important points in your opinion. That's enough. I definitely don't think it's a good idea to summarize as much. If you have time, just give 3 highlights, key points. Just mention them again. Don't explain them. Just mention that they discussed these points. And if you have more time, analyze them. But I personally don't think it's conducive to really say every single thing that they say. Summarize means, maybe I used the wrong word. I should have said something like, just give a recap or mention 2 or 3 key aspects of what they said. Maybe that should be enough. Keeping that brief is okay. Maybe it's better. Yeah,
Okay.
but this is my
Thank you.
personal opinion.
And
You know, everyone does it differently. Yeah.
yeah, I think depends like how you are in that place, you know, how to do it. As it comes from inside also, I think. And
Yeah.
another question is like this, like speakers, you know, sometimes like, yeah, we can say to audience, okay, you know, we, like you said, that we can tell them politely, but some speakers are very slow speaker, you know, their points come, like their main essence of the title comes very slow, but the time, again, it's like we have limited time, you know, we have a time frame for that.
Yeah.
So in
And
that
then
case,
people get
how to
bored.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah, I get bored also.
You know, it depends. Like I remember, this is not from a Scholar event, but I remember once I was on the panel on CGTN, and the one of the guests was speaking so slow, like it really so slow. And you know, and it's also happened with us, like in Scholar events as well. Like some people are taking too long. If it is a panel discussion, then it's a good idea to ask them in the middle that it just depends. Okay, I think firstly, like you have to make sure you're respectful towards your guest. That's so important. But for example, if someone speaks slow, I don't think we can do much about that. But we can remind them that we need to finish soon, maybe nicely, and maybe then they can just focus on their key point. It's not a big deal, even if they get slightly awkward, because this is a necessity everywhere, whether it's an academic event, whether it's something like the kind of events we do for Scholar. You need to, someone needs to step up and say, hi, our time is a bit limited. Or, you know, if it's one person and it's like a discussion club with one person, you can just pause them for a bit and even whisper like to them slowly, like no one else can hear, that, okay, we'll have some time limitation, but you need to manage the time. Maybe give them one chance to speaking slowly if it's a panel discussion. The second time after they're done, you can nicely say, oh, by the way, we need to keep, let's try to keep our responses short, quick, because we would like to cover as much as possible, you know, etc.
Great.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Shreya.
Thank you, Zoon. Let's jump into the last question of our Scholar Inside from Vika. She just typed it, I think, in the chat, and let me read it out. So, Zoon, if we have time, all right. So how do you feel about hosting online events versus offline meetings? How to get the energy up for those who are watching online?
I drink too much coffee online. I think definitely something to get used to. But the fact that, for me personally, the fact that I've anchored and I've had to pretend a camera is a person, you know, or people. It helped do that. But when you're having an online event, it definitely maybe takes a couple to understand how to get that energy out. And I still know people who speak very well in person or in front of an actual audience, and they're so experienced, but in an online event, their energy levels are relatively lower. So I think it's just something, instead of worrying about that, like just try to imagine that these are real people, this is a real interaction. Just imagine that. and it will just get better over time. But worrying about it can make people nervous and anxious, and then they can just maybe they can lose their focus from the topic, and instead start thinking, oh, am I okay? I don't think I can like focus. I mean, is my energy level okay? Just still try to keep the focus on the content. But it definitely is different. And mostly it isn't better. An online event drops the synergy, you know. You feel, so you can feel like you're talking to yourself, like me sometimes right now.
All right. Thank you, Zoon.
I think it's
Let's hope the online event's going to be less really soon in the future, and we can come back to the real life events back in Beijing.
Let's
and all
hope
together
so,
with the SCOLAR family.
Let's hope. But
Thank you for please. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, to keep the energy. I think the other thing is, like, for example, when I'm talking and Kamal, you're hosting, right? This one.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know that the people whose screens are off, like, are they interested or not? So in a way, in an online event, actually we can't really know, but maybe a good way could be to just keep interrupting. I don't know, like in a way, maybe, you know, like we just don't know, we just talk at the screen, you know, just be yeah.
I've been having some events when we force people to turn on the cameras, otherwise they're not able to. Yeah, it's, I mean, yes, it's understandable.
Yeah, it feels good.
All right, awesome. Yeah. So thank you, Zoon. Amazing insight, amazing scholar insight from you. A lot to learn. I'm glad we made a recording to share with everyone to learn even more. You will be more than welcome. I would love to see you more in our Scholar Insight events. As Alina is sending love to you and to everyone of the Scholar family. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Zoon. Thank you, Alina. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. That was great.
Right.
Hope to see you in person as well. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye. See you soon.
Have a good day.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I finish.